Now, we're going to go through a lot of information here today on what's going on in Washington and on the policy side of things, and probably more importantly, or perhaps more accurately, what isn't going on or may not go on in Washington, D.C. So let's get to that new farm bill. It was a case study in patience and wisdom. And I'm not exactly sure who displayed which at this juncture. Now, this farm bill process went on for quite a while. This is a slide we could also label Farm Bill fatigue. The first hearings for this farm bill were held in May 2010. And here we arrive in February 2014, so almost 5 years down the road, we got a farm bill. 959 pages in the Agricultural Act of 2014. That's a nice simple name as opposed to the Food, Agriculture, Conservation, Trade, and blah, blah, blah. You know, they come up with all these wonderful names to put in stuff. Pretty simple. Agricultural Act of 2014. Another way to look at this, about $1 billion a page. Yeah, about $1 billion a page. The 10-year cost of this bill is right around $956 billion, somewhere in there. So about $1 billion a page in the bill. It saves $16.6 billion over 10 years, but notice you hear lawmakers talking about $23 billion. Well, how does that come about? Remember those nasty sequester cuts they hate? Guess what? They sure like to talk about them now because that farm bill saves even more money. It saves $23 billion, not the $16 billion or $16.6 billion that everybody thought it would based on the scoring. The commodity title, some reductions there, $14 billion over 10 years. Biggest thing there was those direct payments being eliminated. Nutrition title spending down $8 billion over 10 years. But nutrition still is the biggest chunk of that farm bill. Very close to 80% of the spending in the quote-unquote farm bill is on nutrition programs. So they took an $8 billion reduction. That was well above what the Senate had proposed of $4 billion, but well below what the House Republicans wanted, which was $40 billion. So nutrition spending, ironically, was not the bugaboo when it came down to finishing this bill. A lot of it boiled down to payments to farmers on planted versus base acres. That's what held things up. That, including dairy policy, held things up at the last moment. Conservation spending reduced about $6 billion over 10 years. Crop insurance up about $5.7 billion over that 10-year period. Two big reasons. One, the cotton program. It's now called the Stacked Income Protection Program, or STAX. That program doesn't start till 2015, but cotton is no longer in the commodity title. That STAX program is under the crop insurance title of the bill. So that moved it out of the commodity program spending. The other thing the cotton folks like about it, there's no payment limit on crop insurance payments. So cotton folks have always chafed under the payment limitations. This removes them from that equation. But that $5.7 billion increase in spending also reflects something called the supplemental coverage option, which is available to farmers starting in the 2015 crop year. So the funding estimations are that there's going to be enough participation in those two options to boost that spending. But keep that number in mind because down the road, that one is going to come up once again. Gone are those direct payments, $5.1 billion a year, except for there is a transition payment for cotton because that program starts only in 2015, does not start for the 2014 crop year. Rest of the Farm Bill covers 2014 through 2018 crops. The countercyclical payments, average crop revenue election program, acre, those are gone from the farm program mix that we have now. Also the supplemental revenue assistance payments, or SURE program, also gone from our farm program mix. This is a look at the 10-year baseline for the bill. Of that, crop insurance is about $84 billion, commodities just under $60. So commodities and conservation running about neck and neck now, but look at that number over in the bottom left, nutrition. That's also a reflection of the U.S. economy too. The reason why we've had record participation in the nutrition programs. Now, one of the changes made in nutrition was the Farm Bill took out the old requirement. If states sent out even just $1 in heating assistance to people, that automatically qualified them for SNAP, what we always called food stamps, okay? They put a $20 limit in there. I don't think lawmakers counted on one of the coldest winters arriving You know, because $20 towards heating bills this winter isn't going to go a long ways in a lot of parts of the country. So we'll see how that one shakes out. But that is at least part of those $8 billion in spending reductions on that nutrition program. Here's your farmer choices. It's a pretty simple chart. USDA put this together. Joe Glauber is the chief economist. This was from his presentation at the Outlook Forum last week. Under the commodity title, here's the farmer choices. Either ag risk or area revenue coverage, and you can choose it on either the county level or on your individual farm. Most corn and soybean farmers we've talked with in the heart of the Corn Belt are looking at that ARC county program because it's a revenue-based program. It's that shallow loss program. The other side is price loss coverage. That's based on the old target prices, or now they're called reference prices. So those are the two real options that farmers have to choose. Of course, crop insurance is still available. There's the Upland Cotton and Cotton program called STAX, and that supplemental coverage option only applies if they go the price loss coverage. So this is at least giving some of the guys in the Corn Belt something to think about as they're going in. But again, the initial blush that we're hearing from farmers is that ARC county level for the corn and soybean farmer. The price loss coverage, again, target and reference price based. Dairy dairy got a lot of what they wanted, but they didn't get the voluntary supply management out of it. This was a case study in you don't go up against the Speaker of the House. John Boehner made it clear that he did not want voluntary supply management in that farm bill. At one point even said, if there's voluntary supply management in that bill, I'm not even going to bring it up on the House floor. That was a clear sign. Colin Peterson pushed and pushed and pushed right up to the very last minute, but in the end, the Speaker of the House won. So right there's a case study in you don't go against the Speaker of the House. Base acres are what the payments are going to be made on under this farm bill, not planted acreage. And this is a look at where we've got base acres right now. See, we've got over 70 million acres, 73.7 million in base acres for wheat. But what's been the planting over 2009 to 2012? Only about 55.7 million acres. There's also the ability to update bases in this bill, and that's based on the 2009 to 2012 level. You can imagine that there's probably going to be some reallocations going on, and that's probably going to lead to fewer wheat base acres out there, more corn and more soybean base acres based on where we've seen plantings over that 2009 to 2012 period. But this is going to be an important thing to keep in mind. I mean, look at that for cotton too. Cotton base acres now turn into what are called generic base acres. And you get paid on those depending on how much you plant to a crop, and they sort of reallocate things that way. This is the ag risk coverage. I know we've got some wheat folks in here, so this is how it really shakes out. What we're starting to pick up, though, is that target or reference price-based option may be more of what a wheat producer might look at. That county ag risk coverage guarantee is 86% of the benchmark revenue. That benchmark revenue is based on an Olympic average where you throw out those high and low years, okay, of the county yields and the U.S. crop year average prices for the preceding 5 years. Now, this is an important point. Under this farm program, the first payments under the commodity title of this bill will not come until October 2015. Now, a lot of folks have gotten used to that direct payment money showing up every October. The last direct payment dollars came out in October 2013. There are none for 2014. So come October 2014, there's not going to be direct payment money showing up in the bank accounts. The commodity program payments, the first ones, will not arrive until October 2015. We're already picking up. That's probably going to increase interest in the old price support loan program. And it's cheap money, folks. Right now, the interest rate on a loan under the USDA price support loan program is 1.125%. That's cheap money. That gives cash flow. All indications are we're going to see a stepped up use of that this fall as farmers need some cash flow. And that really is what that loan program was meant for, to allow farmers to hold their crops and sell them at a higher price. But that is probably one of the things we'll see stepped up in terms of use. The coverage under ARC capped at 10%. That's between 76 and 80% of that county benchmark revenue. So it's the shallow loss program that was talked about over the last couple years in this farm bill. Under price loss coverage, that's based on the target prices, and it's paid on 85% of the base, okay? Same thing with the ag risk coverage, paid on 85% of your base acres. These are the target price levels, and the $370 for corn and $840 for soybeans are why corn and soybean farmers are not looking at the price loss coverage very hard. Because compared to where current market prices are, those target or reference prices are far below that level. So they're not really looking at that one very much, near as much as they are on that ag risk coverage side. The wheat price is above that, but depending on whose projections you look at, that could come into play as well coming down the road. Under that price loss coverage is paid when the greater of the market year price or the loan rate is above the reference price, or is below the reference price, okay? That prior screen. So that's when those start kicking in. So that's really what we got to look at, and that supplemental coverage option under the crop insurance program starts in 2015. Now, sign up on this bill, not going to start before April. And that means we're going to have, and we're also going to have a long time for this sign-up process to start. There's $100 million FSA gets to implement it, $3 million go to the extension service, that's for education, $3 million go to the universities, that's to build a web-based decision-making tool to help you make the choice. But you're going to have several months before you've got to decide. And you've got to get, if you've got landlords, you've got to get everybody on the same page to go into the program. Everybody's got to sign off on being in the same thing. And there will be an annual sign-up. The election you make this year for 2014 is with you for the life of the bill. That's 2014 to 2018 crops, okay? So it's a one-time decision, but you still are going to have to come in every year and sign up. If you don't, FSA is going to toss you into the price loss coverage, and you get a big old goose egg if there's any price loss coverage payments for 2014. Payment limitations, $125,000 a person, and it goes across the PLC, ARC programs, and the marketing loan program. There's no longer the individual by program limits in there. So it's $125,000 a person, $250,000 per married couple. And again, that's all combined. So it's not a single, it's not individualized per program payment limits. One big payment limit. Adjusted gross income, simplified. 3-year average, $900,000. Doesn't matter if it's on or off farm income. Pretty simple. $900,000, 3-year average AGI. That's what you have to be under to qualify for a payment. Livestock folks didn't do exceptionally well in some areas of the bill. These are three that there was so much discord that nothing happened. Country of origin labeling, the issue was, would there be elimination? That wasn't going to happen. Could there be a North American label happen? There wasn't enough support, so in the end, no change in cool in this new farm bill. The King Amendment, states' rights. That's what struck that from the bill. And the gypsum poultry rule, again, there couldn't be any agreement, so they just left it out. Livestock producers, though, did get resurrection of the disaster programs, livestock indemnity, and the other ones listed there, payment limit up to $125,000. Sign up for that starts by April 15, and USDA's been directed to be flexible because it's going to be multi-years because these were resurrected going back to 2012. That's a nod to the folks, I think a lot of it up in areas of the Dakotas, et cetera, that had a pretty rough winter last year in particular. USDA, the funding for those programs, they're made permanent now, and USDA is directed to use such sums as are necessary. If you ever hear that with a program, that means they will spend what they need to spend. It's not limited, okay? So if your losses are 15 or your losses are, X thousands of dollars, you're not going to get it reduced because overall spending for the program is limited. They are supposed to use such sums as are necessary. The other provisions pretty much are the same as they were before. Under crop insurance, conservation compliance is now linked to crop insurance, but it's forward-looking. They're not going to go back and see if you were in compliance with with conservation compliance last year or the year before that. It's forward-looking, and the time for compliance does give you some time to come back into compliance before they nail you. So just remember that. But most people that were part of the regular farm program are already in conservation compliance, so it probably doesn't matter a whole lot. But it is in that bill, and that's something you do need to remember that is there. Undersecretary for Trade is now a part of the USDA structure. I'm not a big fan usually of creating more bureaucracy, but in this case, the last time anything was done on our export programs and who's responsible for them was 1978. We had roughly $30 billion in exports. The updated forecast for 2014 is $142 billion. We've got a lot different picture on trade than we used to. So instead of 5 or 6 agencies in USDA being responsible for different responsibilities under trade, it'll be under one umbrella, and that'll help things moving forward. Real quick, on the next farm bill, how this farm bill is implemented, the mistakes and the successes will dictate things. Budget savings, what works and what doesn't, what do prices do? That's really going to dictate whether this farm bill is going to be viewed as successful or not. Farm bill costs surge and prices decline. Are our WTO friends going to start raising questions and take us to the WTO for spending too much money? And when lawmakers look for future spending savings, they're going to look at the crop insurance program. That's where lawmakers are going to look in the future when they've got to make spending reductions. Who controls Congress and the committees? That's going to be very important because there could be some changes. If the Senate is in the hands of the Republicans, that's going to shift who's in charge of the Senate Ag Committee. Even if the Democrats retain control, odds are Chairwoman Stabenow from the Ag Committee is going to jump and take the Budget Committee, and that would leave a senator by the name of Sherrod Brown from Ohio in line to take over the chairmanship of the Senate Agriculture Committee. So these are times when who is in charge of the committee makes a difference. And in terms of the White House, who controls that in 2016, that plays into the implementation process for this farm bill. Who is driving the bus on implementing this farm bill? That's key. And who is in charge of that makes a difference in how things unfold. For trade policy, fast-track trade negotiating authority, not going anywhere fast right now. Both Majority Leader Reid in the Senate and Nancy Pelosi in the House have said they are not in favor of the current TPA package. They're trying to extract something from somebody is our guess. And trade adjustment assistance is probably where they're going. We've had a lot of change in our exports. Developing countries are starting to move into the export market. Think Ukraine, despite their current issues that they're facing. Also, Brazil has asked the WTO to look at our stacks program. Our trade contacts think that is going to go through. Real quick on other trade policy issues for you, that Canadian Free Trade Agreement, these are the keys, and really the ones to watch down here is right here. In that agreement that they've got with Europe, they get another 50,000 tons of access on beef and 75,000 tons of access on pork into the European market. That's why the trade talks with the U.S. and the European Union are important, because look what Canada was able to do. That gets their foot in the door with a better looking result than what we have right now. As far as country of origin labeling, that May 24th final rules, what we're working under, the WTO is examining it. Look for that decision to come sometime here within the March-April time frame. Trade sources we've talked with think it is not going to be judged to bring us into compliance. Very good. With that, I thank you all very much.